Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inshallah, today we'll learn about functions in Python. Okay, are you there with me? Aisha Siddiqa, are you there with me?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Yes.
Okay, so we'll start our class, inshallah. The other participants may join in between, inshallah. So we'll not wait much for them and we'll begin our class. So inshallah, today we'll get to know what is meant by a function and how we can define our own functions in Python language. So firstly, let us try to understand what is meant by a function. Function is nothing but a block of code which will consist of some lines of statements or lines of instructions to perform some particular task. For example, I can say sum is the name of a function which will perform addition of two numbers. The same way, I can define another function called difference which will subtract two numbers. So in this way, I can define any number of functions for my purpose. So these functions will be called as user-defined functions. It means that the functions which are defined, which are designed by the user for the purpose of the user are called as user-defined functions. So Python allows to define various functions. We have seen so many predefined or inbuilt functions previously. For example, in Python, whenever we are taking input from the console, then we use the function called input. Or if we are trying to print something on the output screen, we use the function print. But these functions are not made by us. These functions are already there in Python library, and these functions are called as predefined or inbuilt functions. It means that they are already built, they know their definition, everything is defined and stored, and that's why we are reusing those functions for our purpose. So let us see how we can define our own functions. Before that, I'll just clarify much more things about a function. As I have told you that these are some block of codes which are arranged together to do some particular task. So every function will take some input data and it will do all the operations. I mean, as per the data that you have given to that function, it processes or computes and then it displays results. For example, I can say that you are one of the participant in our class now. If I say Aisha Siddiqa, you are very proficient in doing some task. For example, you are very proficient in doing verification. So in terms of coding, I can say that you are a function of verification. So whenever I give you some document, your task would be take that document, process it, verify it, and give it back to me. So this is a very simple, lively example of function. Okay, so here a function can also call another function. Okay.
One thing I need to ask, user built-in functions are already defined in the library.
Yeah.
They are predefined.
Yeah.
User-defined functions, is there any information regarding these user-defined function in the data?
Yes, there will be one kind of syntax that you have to follow, and using that rules only you can define a function. We are not free to define as we wish. Some of the syntax rules that we need to follow to define our own function. So once we create a function, we need to call that function. Okay. For example, I know that you are proficient in some task, but I need to contact you and give you the data, right, to do that particular task in which you are proficient. So I need a communication with you. I need to call you, right? The same way we'll call a function saying that please do this task. So here it's showing us that we are trying to call the function. How we'll call? Using that function name. And once the function is called, the function will do all the tasks and returns it to the caller function. Okay, these two terminologies try to understand is one is calling function. Calling function, it means the one who is calling us, and called function, the one which is called. In our case, for example, I am trying to call Mehraj Unnisa for some task. In this case, Mehraj Unnisa is a called function and I am the calling function. Okay, if this is clear, we'll move a little forward how we can define our own functions in Python. I have shown you the definitions and how we can design our own functions in C++. Now I'll let you know about Python, inshallah. So function definition begins with the keyword def, which means define. Okay, it begins with the keyword def, and this will be def keyword will be followed by the function name. Here we are free to name our function with anything. You can define Shahana, define Alia, define Mehraj, define Unnisa, define something, whatever you want, you are free to do that. First define, def, function name, and then some parenthesis. Parenthesis, it will take only one parenthesis. Okay, these are two here, but it takes only one parenthesis. After that, you have to give some arguments. Arguments in the sense here, it can be a file. For example, when I am asking you to do some task, I'll give you some data. I'll give you some file, right? The same way, every function has to be given some arguments, or it has to be given some data to process. That data we say as arguments, or we say as parameters. Okay, these two terms are same. We say variables, we say parameters, or we say the arguments. These are the same. Some functions don't take any parameters. Okay, some functions will be empty. When we see the examples, you will be very clear that why some functions will take parameters and why some functions don't take any parameters. Okay, and the next thing is the functions will follow a colon. If you remember, Mehraj, when we were using for loop and when we were using if or any other loops, we were always using the colon. So colon is something which will make the Python to understand that here is the stop of this condition and now the actual processing, actual function is starting. Okay, so it will follow the colon and is intended. What I mean by intended, if you can answer my question, please give me. We already know the meaning of intended, right? We have seen it in if, and we have seen it in for, and we have seen in other loops. What is meant by indentation or indent?
It specifies a code.
Yeah, indent is nothing but the space that we follow while printing something after a if statement or after a for. For example, if we have something like this, if I is greater than 0, then we always write colon after that and then we press enter. Whenever I press the enter, there is some space that has been here. This is it's approximately 5 spaces. And I write it here. If I am writing it before these 5 spaces, it will give me an error. It says that there is an indentation error. What does this mean? This is not the right way to program. This is not right way. You have to give the space, which is the 5 spaces, and then you have to begin your programming. Whenever it's if statement, whenever if it's loop, whenever it is functions, but it's not in other cases. Why is the reason we need to give space? Whenever we are giving the space, the compiler will understand, sorry, the interpreter will understand that this print statement is inside this if. If you don't write it with the spaces, it will not understand that this is inside this if. So here in this language, we don't have any curly braces to show that this print statement is inside this if. In other languages, we have some flowery braces to show that this is inside this thing. But here we don't have that curly braces. And to save our programming from this curly braces, we are using this indentation. Okay, you are clear? Yeah. So
it's the space. Indentation is the space which we give before that print function.
Yes, this will be followed in only conditional statement. One I have shown you the if, conditional statements and loops and the functions. Okay, this is only there in these three cases. The next last thing that we'll have in a function is the return expression. So whenever I am saying I am giving you some task, you will perform that task and give me back, right? Isn't it? Whenever some function is called, it has to perform some task and it has to return. That's the reason a function sometimes need to have a return statement. Okay, sometimes a function will not have any return statement. If I want you to give a very simple example, I asked who is there with us. Okay, Muhammad Abdul Arif, we have you here, so I'm giving an example with your name. Okay, I asked Abdul Arif to just bring a cup of coffee and serve it to the some guest. Okay, what I asked, if in this case, in this coding case, I consider Abdul Arif as a function to do some task, the task is fetch a coffee and serve it to the guest. So what Abdul Arif is doing? Taking the coffee and giving it to the guests. Okay, this is one scenario. Okay, the other scenario I am saying, now I called Abdul Arif and asked him to fetch a cup of coffee and give it to me. Okay, this is another scenario. Give it to me. Okay, so in these two scenarios, in which scenario Abdul Arif is returning something to me? In which scenario is he returning something to me? You didn't get my two scenarios. In the first scenario, he's doing the task and giving it to the guest. In the second scenario, he is giving the coffee to me. So in
both scenario, we have to return it, I think.
In the first scenario, you are doing the task there itself, but you are not returning it to the calling function, right? If I am the calling function, you are not returning it to me, right? So in the first case, you had some task and you have to finish that task there on itself. With your will and wish, you can do it as you want. But in the second case, you have to return to the calling function. So the second case is the calling. So do you understand what I mean by returning and what I mean by not returning? Aisha Siddiqa and Mehnat, you got this?
Yes.
What is meant by returning and what is meant by not returning? When a function is not returning anything, it means that it's doing the task there itself by its own will and wish, by its own processing power and by its own resources. It's doing it by there itself. Okay, done? Yeah. And then we'll move forward. So what is the benefit that we have in using function is that, as we have told you before in the last class, we took an example, right? We have to calculate some average and percentage of 100 number of students in a class. How we did? We became one kind of function and we shared the task, right? So the first benefit of functions is reusability. Once we have designed one kind of function, we can use it any number of times. Second, Modularity. What I mean by modularity is the big program, the big task is being divided into small modules, into small parts. The third is maintenance. It's very easy to maintain and it's very easy to remember that this function does this function does this, and all. Okay, these are the major three benefits. Of course, there are many, but you have to just basically remember these things. So this is the syntax of writing any user-defined function. I have already told you we need to start with the def keyword and the function name, anything you can give, and the parenthesis will be like this, and whatever parameters that you want to have, you can have it in these parentheses with a colon and function body. The function body should have the indentation. So this is one simple example where we defined a function called my function and we are printing hello from this function. After defining any function, we need to call that function. I told you before that we have to call the function by the function name followed by the parenthesis. Let us see this very quick example. Okay. What I have to do, I have to write definition and then function name. What is our function name? My function. Okay, because it's our first function, we are writing like this, then a colon, then enter. This is something. Okay, I am printing the hello world. This function is printing something, hello world, and this is my first function. Okay, after that, here I have finished the definition. You don't require to write anything like this or any parenthesis, anything else. After you are done with the definition, you can call the function like this, my function. See, it's already giving me here. Okay, one thing, observe it here. Whenever I am writing something like this, it's saying that this is local. I'll explain you what does this mean today, inshallah. Okay, my function and the parenthesis, then I try to run. Okay, see, this gave me hello world. This is my function. Let me remove this and run this. Do I get any output? No, I don't get any output because I have done with the definition, but I am not calling it. It's there in the memory that this function prints something, but someone has to call that function. In C++, we have seen that the function is always called in the main function. Even in Java, the functions are always called in the main functions, but here we don't have any main functions, right? So we will call it anywhere that we want. Okay, like this, and we can call a function inside a function too. So we'll move a little forward. Yeah, if a function has to return some value, we'll go with this keyword called return. So let me just define another function which is the same. Okay, here I say this my function 1, and I say that this function is taking the arguments. In the first case, this function was not taking any arguments, right? In the second case, my function is taking one argument, and then this function is gonna return something. What it will return? I'm saying that please return 5 multiplied with whatever the number that you are sending to this function. What does this mean? 5 multiplied by this. Now let me call this function. Okay, now Mehraj will tell me how can I call this function 1. Okay, I want to call this function 1. Can I do it like this? Is this the right way to call this function?
We have to give some values.
Yes, exactly. We need to give some value because here we have the argument. Okay, the value can be 5, right? 5 or anything I can give. Okay, the value must not have, I mean, it should not be 5, it can be anything. Okay, I can give 10. Shall I run this? What should I get the output? Tell me. What output should I get? 50. Okay, let us run. Bismillah. Okay. Why I didn't get any output? Why?
You didn't print it.
Very good. I haven't printed this one. So in this case, this function is not doing the task of printing. This function is returning the value. Return. What it has to return? Whatever the number you will send me, I'll multiply it with 5 and return it to you. Okay, fine. Where it's being returned? Here. Here, wherever we are calling. So let me print that thing. Can I do like this? Print whatever the value that is there in this function. This function 1. Okay, function 1 will give 10 value to this here, and then this will be returned again to here and it will be printed. Okay, so here we got 50. The other way is I can do like this. A equals my function. Okay, now in this case I am writing 20. Now who will answer me what will be the value that's stored in A? What is the value that is stored in A? Before I print A,
100.
how much?
100.
100. Okay, who's that? Okay, I didn't see who was that, but your answer is right. Good for that, mashallah. So you understood that. Here, whatever the value that function 1 is catching up, I am storing that in the variable A and printing it. Okay, you got this right? Very good. And we'll move a little forward. Where am I? Yeah, here. I have shown you this example. If we are taking two parameters, we can do it the same way. Whatever we get it, we can return it. See here in this example, this function is average and it's taking 2 variables, and then the variable average is storing a plus b over 2, and then we are returning the variable average. The result variable is storing the value that is coming from the average function. AVG is the function here. Okay, 6 comma 7, and then after that we are printing. It's the same example that we have done, but here we have 2 parameters. Okay, done. So what if we have multiple values? I mean to say, if we have to return multiple variables. So this is one of the very powerful features of Python, which is not there in it. We can return multiple values in other programming languages, but it takes some hard work. Here we can do it in much easier way. Let me just copy this line of code and show you how it executes. Here, let us comment this thing, whatever we have done until now, so that we practice newer things here. So are you able to understand what this function is doing? This function, my calculator, who is this? Okay, Aisha Siddiqa, please tell me what is this calculator function is doing. What's the purpose of this calculator, my calculator function? This is a function, right? This is a function. What this function does. Okay.
I have no idea regarding this.
Okay, this function, my calculator, is the name of the function. It's taking a and b as arguments, and once it takes the arguments, it's summing up a plus b and storing it in x, and then subtracting a minus b, storing it in y. And then so 4 variables have been taken, and the 4 variables are storing some computation, some calculation that are performed on these 2 variables. After that, it returning the 4 variables that's storing the values. Okay, so this is the purpose of this my calculator function. After this, we know that this function is returning x, y, z, and s. That's the reason we need to call this function, catch up the values that it's returning, and then print. I can say like this: print my calculator name. I'm copying it here, and let me take 5 and 2. Okay, so see here what I got when I sent 5 and 2. Of course, it's giving me all the values are being given in a, what is this? What is this? Something stored in a parenthesis. What is this? Is this a list or a tuple?
Tuple.
Sorry? It's a list or a tuple?
Tuple.
Okay, tuple is dynamic. I mean, can it be changed or it can't be changed during its programming? Are tuples mutable
No,
or
it's
immutable?
immutable.
It's
Immutable.
Yeah, it's immutable. Okay, so we got the
Is
values.
it possible to generate that multiple parameter from the function?
Generate multiple parameters. I didn't get your question completely. If
No,
you
normally in C in other languages,
yeah,
we can able to generate only one type of value, not a different type of para values. Now we are generating here x, y, z, and s. So these 4 different values we are returning back from the function.
yes,
So is it how that type will be defined in
yes.
the calling function?
Yes, the type, we don't have to define the type. So one good thing that we have here in Python, that we don't have to explicitly define the types. We can return any type of variable. See here, all these are integers, but here it's a float type, but yet it's returning. So even if you change the type of the variables, then that will not make any difference, and that will allow you to return or call. Okay, so this is one good powerful thing in Python that we can do. As you said, multiple parameters. By your question, I mean that you are saying multiple parameters of different type, isn't it?
Yes, right.
Yes, that is possible. You can do it. Multiple parameters of different types is also possible. Okay.
Then in calling end, how they will receive the data and how they will differentiate that for do some other functionalities.
The functionality that you are doing, if you are sending different types of data, you have to be careful that what functionality you are performing on different types of data. For example, if it's a string, if I say S is a string here, okay, this is a string, then I have to store it in this way. For example, this is like this. And when you are doing the computations or the operations that you perform on that type of data, that have to be valid. Okay, you can't say Alia minus something like this. Okay, you can't do like this. If it's a string, you have to be careful about the operations that you perform on that. Okay, are you getting my point? The operations are the major thing that you have to be careful.
No, in calling and for example, I'm calling in online. My calculator method I'm calling here, right? I'm passing some
Okay.
parameter. I'm calling the return
Okay.
value. How can I get that? How can I store the return value in one variable? And how to do some logic in that based on the return value? How can I do that?
If you can give me some example in the chat, I'll clear you. I'll just code it here and then I'll show it to you. Okay.
Okay. There is a, for example, it is related to as the same like calculator. So we are doing
Okay.
some calculation, addition, subtraction, division, something.
Okay.
After doing that, we have to square. We have to do the square bracket. We have to do square the values, each and
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
One value, first value, you have to do the square, and second value, we need to do the root. Take the root of that square, root of that
Okay.
value, square
Yes.
root. I mean,
Yes.
like that we have to do. So how to
Yes.
do that? And another value, we have to do some adding some string value. I mean, the character value you have to add it. Like that, we have to make it the function. In that way, how to do that?
You mean to say after, okay, the things that you have told, the square root or squaring or cubing, this is very simple. You can do it. After that, you are saying that you want to keep some X or Y or Z beside that value, right?
Yes, per here I'm returning only the integer number value, numbers, right? But addition to that, I'm passing string value also.
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
it
yeah.
as
I got
a
your point.
yes, it might, yeah,
Yes.
something.
So,
So that and in the calling function, in the calling method, I have
yeah,
to
yeah.
do some appending the value, whatever
Yes,
it got
yes,
returned. I have to append some
yes.
other string also.
Yes, if you remember, we did one simple example like this. Okay, S plus 6. We did a simple example like we wrote S as this. If this is a string, right? This is a, I can say this is a string, or I can say this. Sorry, just little. Okay. You just have to keep that value as the, whatever the value that you will get after the operation, you have to take that value as a string and then add it to that. If you want to write some x, 3x square, for example, your problem is problem you have to show 3x square. Okay, if this is your problem, you have to show this number and the string or the character, then you have to do it in this way. Okay, you have to take those two things as the same type of variables. If you are doing it just you are adding the numbers, then that's fine. But when you are doing it with the character or with the string, you have to consider the number also as a string. Okay, did you get my point?
Sorry, no.
No. Okay, let me do this example. Here you want the calculator to do the calculation of numbers and also some strings. Is this your question?
Yes, right. And in the return, I mean in the calling from line, I have to do some logic.
Okay. So as per your question, you are asking me to give different types of parameters, not just multiple parameters to a function, right? In this case, if I give just like different parameters, here we are not defining any type of parameter. In the other languages, for example, if it was C++, whenever we were defining a function, we say the parameters are already defined. For example, it's a function in C++, we say int x and char y. For example, if it's this way, then it's very easier to do it. In C++, we explicitly define the types of the parameters, but here in this, we are not defining the type of the parameters, right? We are not giving the type explicitly. And that's the reason whatever the first parameter that you give in the calling function, that would be considered as the type, and it will expect the other parameters to be of that type. You get my point? And the second thing, okay, fine, I want to pass two strings to this calculator. But now when I try to do this kind of operation on the string parameters, it will say me that, okay, if both are string, it will accept me. But the other operations, for example, if it's x equal to a minus b or a over b, then it will give me an error. The reason is the Python is I can say it's an experienced programming language. It's a very developed programming language. It will not expect any programmer to do simple or silly mistakes. It expects that the programmer is intelligent enough that he understands that the parameters that we pass have to match up with the operations that we do in a function. Are you getting my point? This interpreter expects that we have to match up everything by ourselves. We have to be careful and learn with our errors. Okay, are you getting? But you have one option. If you remember in the last topic that we dealt in the list and tuples, we can create a list or a tuple using different types of data sets, right? It can be a string, it can be a float, it can be an integer or anything like that, right? And here, if I want to pass this list to a function, I can do it, right? How? I can pass it by using the function name and the list name. Okay, the function name and list name. And whatever operation that I want to perform on all of the elements of this function, elements of this list, I can do it. Here I have the strings, here I have the integers, here I have the other things. If you want to specifically catch up one particular thing, how can we do? If I want to just catch up this thing of this list, tell me, how can I catch up this one? Who will tell me?
Using indexing.
Very good. Using indexing, we can do it. Sorry, this is not the way to comment in Python. Yeah. Okay. So, how can I catch up that one? This fruits of 1, right? So, I can catch up this fruits of 1 plus if it is something like this.
It's a
For
phone
example,
or food?
sorry?
It's a food, right?
It's of fruits.
No, we are passing in function, it is food, right?
One thing is here, one thing that you have to remember that, yes, of course, it will take food of 1 here, but the variables that we pass here and the variables that we pass here shouldn't have to be same. The name shouldn't have to be same. For example, if you see here, it's at the second time, what we are giving 5 and 2. So these values will be reference to A and B. Okay, the same way this fruits list will be reference to the food list that it is defined here. Okay, but when we are using it in the function, I have to use food of 1. Okay, you are right. I explained a bit more on this. So this food variable name, the list name is local to this function, and that's the reason I have to use this. And I want to sum all of these things like this. Food of, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Okay, so in this way I can do it. Or if I want to sum all the strings in this list, I can do it again. You can run a loop which is only catching up the odd values. You can run a loop which is catching up only the even values as per your list. You have to define it as per your list. Okay, so this may answer your question. So there are many ways to do solve a problem in Python. This is not the only way. You know, it's an ocean. It's really an ocean. I have shown you one simple way of using multiple data types, but of course there are hundreds of other ways. So there is only not one solution for any problem. There are so many solutions. We can adapt to that solution which is easily understandable to us and which we can easily implement. Okay? Yeah. So we'll move a little forward. Now I am going to the topic of local and global variables that I have just now explained about the name of this list food and name of this list fruits. So here I'll clarify a bit more to you. As per the definition or as per the keyword, the global means global. It's known to all, it's accessible to all, it's everywhere. But when I say the local, it means that it's native, it's local, it's there itself. It can be accessible there itself. We use this in our common terminology that local and non-local, we use it very frequently. So local variables are only accessible inside a function. They cannot be accessible outside the function. Here, if we see this example, okay, this food is the local list for this function and it can be accessed here itself, but it can't be accessed outside. I can't say my function food. Okay, so this would be local to this function. And what else? We can also say this local and global variables as a scope of variables. Scope of variable is one terminology that is used when one is explaining about local and global variables. Yeah, this is a good example of local and global variable. Just let me copy this and explain you how it's working. Okay. Yeah. So firstly, I am defining x is equals to 1, 2, 3. After that, I am defining a function called display, which is going to display me the value of x. Okay. And after displaying, I say value of y is 789. The 789 value of y is actually there inside the function display. Okay. After that, what I'm doing is calling the function display and asking the display to print x and print y. Okay. 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 Before this, let us remove this thing. Okay. Let us understand one by one. See here, when I am calling the display function, what it's giving me? X value, which is here 1, 2, 3. It's giving me, of course. And then now I am saying print x. Okay, another time I am saying print x. This is not inside the function, this is outside the function, right? The x is outside the function. I'm trying to print. Yes, of course, it's giving me outside the function too. Now I say print y. Where is y? It's inside this function, isn't it? What it's saying me? Name y is not defined. So firstly it printed x values in the function and outside the function. But here it says me the y is not defined. So what do we understand? That whenever we declare any variable globally, this variable is global. It is everywhere. It's accessible everywhere. But this function, inside the function y cannot be accessible everywhere. The global variable x, which is defined outside any function, can be accessed inside the function, can be accessed outside the function too. But y is local to only this function and it can be printed only in that function. It cannot be printed outside that function. Okay. See. Firstly, it printed the X value and then printed the Y value and then the other time that we are calling X. Okay. Yeah. One more thing that you have to understand in local and global variables is the precedence. Precedence, I mean to say the preference. For example, if I initialize the local and global variable with the same name, if I initialize local and global variable with the same name, what will happen? See here, I have x equals to 1, 2, 3 and I am defining the display function, and this time inside the display function I say that x is 7, 8, 9 and now I am printing the value of x. Okay, this print x. So definition of this display function is these two lines. After that, now I want to call this display function. What will it give me when I call? See here, it gave me 7, 8, 9. What does this mean? When I am accessing the x variable, even if it is the global x is there, it's there and it can be accessed, but it's giving the precedence or priority to the local variable. What did you understand from this example? The priority is given, the precedence is given to the local variable whenever we are trying to initialize a local and global variable with the same name. Okay, but the question is, how can we access the global variable? Even though the local and global variable is of same name, how can we access it? Is using the keyword called globals. Globals is a keyword that is used to access the global variable whenever we have same named local and global variable. So in this case, how can I do this? This simple line I have to include in my function to print the global x. What I have to say? Globals. This is a function. After that, globals of this variable x. Okay. Yeah. This variable x, which is global. So when I do this, it will give me the value of the local variable 2 and the global variable 2. Okay. Yeah. One more thing that we have to be very careful with the functions is the number of arguments. The number of arguments that are defined in a function have to be same during the call of that function. Call of that function, I mean whenever we are calling the function, we have to be careful with the number of arguments. For example, in this case, this display is not taking any arguments. If I say dis of 1, it will give me the error that there is no arguments. It was not given in the definition and now you are giving it during the call. So this is not allowed. Here we can see this with some example. One good thing I'll show you here. If we are defining a function called my function and I say this function will take f name as the argument, and that I say please print f name, whatever the f name is being sent to this number, and print something, hello. Okay, and now I want to call my function. What is this? My f, yes, and then I call it with some name. See here, whenever I am saying the f name and I am adding this f name with some string, it has to be of the type string. So whatever the operations that we perform on our variables have to be of same type. Okay, and I say I pass on. What happened to this? Okay, no problem. So I send name. Okay, I send the name and it says me name and plus hello. If I give some space, it will show me the space here. Okay. Okay, and the same way I want to define another function. Okay, here I intentionally am trying to use the same name for these two functions, but I say the different parameter. So the parameters are different for these two functions, but the names are same. So the first name, and I say plus hello, and then I want to print the last name too. Okay, let us print the last name also. Whenever we are printing, we don't need to have any the the quotation marks, but here whenever we are writing the string, we need to have the quotation mark. We know this, right? We know this, we have already seen this. Okay, and now my function, I will call it using two strings. Okay, I say string 1 and then I say string 2. Okay, so exactly as we want it to execute. What's missing here? Did I miss something? L name. Okay, just okay, it's giving me my string 1, hello string 2. So it means that the function overloading is not being allowed in Python. There is one term called function overloading. Function overloading. What do you mean by function overloading is, this is the technique of using same name of function but different parameters. This function overloading is allowed in C++. I think it's not allowing me here in Python, because when I am, okay, let me check it here. It should allow me, but I don't know. Function overloading, it's saying invalid syntax. Where? At the line 1. Oh, sorry, here. Okay, sorry, I have to do this. Yeah, here it's allowing me. But what happened, you know, when I was sending this function, this thing, name, this one argument function was being sent to this function with 2 arguments, and that's the reason it was confused. So whenever we are trying to call the functions as per their arguments, let us not to call the 2 functions of different arguments together. Are you getting my point? You got it? Is the topic confusing?
Yes, I did not get it.
Okay, so here what I was doing is one function with the name myf. Okay, it has only 1 argument. Second function which has the same name but it has 2 arguments. This function is printing the first name that I am sending, and in between I am saying hello, and then it's also printing the last name that I am giving it to it, right? So this function is printing only the first name and printing hello. When I was trying to call these 2 functions together, here my function, this thing, okay, then what was happening, this call was going to this function and it was giving me error that please look after your arguments. Here these are 2 arguments and here you are saying 1 argument. As soon as I define, the call is there and it's confused with this call, and so I am calling it after this definition here and I am calling the second one after this definition here. Okay, not clear. Not clear. More confused. Okay, so I'll not better talk much about this topic, and I give you freedom to experiment on this. Okay, yeah. And then we have the unknown number of arguments. Another functionality that we have is, if we don't know the number of arguments, just give me 1 second. So unknown number of parameters, I first go with this example. This is much simpler and much easier to understand than the previous one. Okay, so I'll just try to write this line of code to make you understand that whenever we don't know the number of arguments that we have to define in a function, then we can go with this technique. Like, okay, so this is the definition of my function, and the name that I am keeping is my students. So the function that I want to define is that the number of students who are attending in my class. So I don't know how many number of students will attend my class, right? I exactly don't know. So in that case, I will write name, star name. When I write star name, the interpreter will understand that, oh, it's taking some argument which is called name. It can be a number, or it can be a string or anything, but it doesn't know that how many number of these kind of arguments are there. The name can be like name, 1 to 5 names can be there, or so many names can be there. Only one name can be there. Okay. And now what I'm saying is, print name. Okay. I'm saying that print name. Are you getting my point? I say print name. Now I call my students using some name called, if I say Alia, okay, it's giving me the name. How it's giving me the name? How it's giving me the name? It's not just giving me the name. It's giving me in the tuple, right? It's giving me in a tuple. It means that it's recording some space for more names. If I give my students comma, I say Mehraj, okay, what happens? It's giving me like this. See? Oh, so good, right? So whenever I don't know the number of arguments, I can just give star and the argument name, and it can go on any number of arguments. I can say Aisha here. Yeah, it goes on. It goes on. Okay. And also, for example, the example that I had was
it will accept a multiple different data type. Different data type.
Here it will give you some kind of problem, I think. Okay, let us just try this. As you said, okay, I'll remove this one. It's giving you. You can do the different parameters, but you have to be very careful with the type of operations that you perform here. Okay, the type of operation if you are performing here, you have to be very careful. Operations, I mean to say, in the addition or subtraction or any computation that you are going to say. This is taking different kind of parameters, because when you are doing the star, it taking it in the form of a tuple. So we have, as we discussed in the last time, using the tuple or using a list, you can pass different types of parameters to a function. The same thing that we are doing here. When we keep the star, it's considering the thing into a tuple. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, some kind of operation if we want to perform here. For example, see here, I'm not saying the star name, I'm saying 5. So what I'm saying here is multiply it with this thing. Okay, so what it's giving me, first time it's giving me the names for 5 times, whatever it's there in the list, it's giving me for 5 times. So this is the one of the operation that we can perform. So this is much more simpler for solving many kind of problems. Here in this example, what it's showing is we have see this one, we have the definition of the function where we are saying child 3, child 2 and child 1, and in the print we are printing only child 3. Okay, we are printing only child 3. I can pass the arguments just like this, Ali or Ali comma Umar comma Dalia. Okay, but I can also send like this, child 1 equals to Ali and child 2 equals to Umar and child 3 equals to Dalia. Okay, in this way I can. The other thing is, here there is another because the time is running up, I am just explaining you can practice it by yourself. So this is the example that we did. We don't know the number of arguments, the number of childs there we don't know, and that's why we are keeping star kids. And the youngest child is, what we are doing, kids of 2. What does this will print? Naharaj, tell me, what does this will print? Kids of 2. This is the thing that I am passing, Ali, Umar and Dalia.
Dalia.
Yes, you are right. So it will take 0, 1, 2. The third position of this list. Okay. Whenever we have seen this example, done. Okay, done. Here is the thing. Whenever we don't have any argument to send, for example, we can experiment it here itself with our previous functions. Okay, I better remove this one. Okay, and I'll remove this one too. So here I say Alia. Okay, and now the second time I'm calling the function and without any arguments. Just give me. Oh, it has to take it. It uses the default value. This is right. I have executed it in the compiler. I don't know why it's not giving here. So the concept here is, whenever we are passing some argument to a function for the first time, and the second time when we are not passing any of the argument, it will store the default argument. The default argument, I mean the last argument, sorry, the default argument, I did not write it here, right? The default argument, sorry, I did not write the default argument here. The default argument, it means sometimes you can have some value to be sent, sometimes you don't have the value to be sent. In that case, the default argument will be executed or taken. If you remember the switch case in our programming, switch case, we have a default case, right? Do you remember this default?
Yes.
So when is the default case executed? When there is no case that is matching up with the input of the user. In that case, the default will be executed. The same way here, the default will be executed. For that reason, we have to keep the value of the default. For example, fname is my argument, fname is my variable. To this variable, I'll give some default value. I can say Mehraj, okay? I can say this is the default value to the fname. If the fname is not given, if it's not passed by any of the user, then that will be taken. Okay, got it? I forgot this default value, and that's the reason it was not giving. Got this point? So this will
Yes.
be the default value. Yeah, and next, here default parameters, we can do it with the integers too. Okay, and yeah, the keyword arguments, I have shown you the example here. We have seen the child1, child2, and child3, right? You can give the keyword, the variable name also, and then you can give the value also. You can do it in that way too. Okay, this is one example. Okay, I don't think we can cover all this, but okay, we'll see it in the next class, inshallah, because we have a recursion and we have some more topics in functions that we need to understand. Inshallah, we'll take the class on Wednesday and try to cover it on that day. Okay, thank you very much for your time. If you have any kind of doubts, please let me know. Yeah, if not, inshallah, we'll end our class and we'll meet on Wednesday, same time, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan kaseera for your time and patience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.